3 years ago, Iranians protesting a rather obviously rigged presidential election in their country were met in the streets by these guys. They're obviously some kind of coordinated force. The unmarked motorcycle, one of their hallmarks, but they are not wearing uniforms. They are the Basij, a kind of militia operating at the behest of the government. They are equipped and obviously directed to be beating and going after, and in some cases killing protesters. But because they are out of uniform, the government doesn't exactly have to answer for their actions. They are deniable.
With clubs, tear gas, and axes, witnesses say Iran today crushed demonstrators who dared to take to the streets. Multiple witnesses claiming to be at the scene consistently described a savage crackdown on a few hundred protesters, outnumbered by several thousand security forces, including the feared Basij militia. The militia, often in plain clothing and loyal to Iran's supreme leader, has used crude weapons, including sticks, axes, chains, and machetes.
1 year ago, after that in Iran, 3 years ago, 1 year ago, we got the same deal in a different country. Same deal, different country, same idea. The protesters in Egypt, in Cairo, and Tahrir Square were chased and beaten in one of the more surreal sights of that revolution. Cairo is a big, modern, cosmopolitan city. People do not generally ride around on camels in a city of 7 million people. But one of the ways Basij-style militiamen attacked opposition forces in Cairo was by riding horses and camels into the crowds in Tahrir Square to terrify and trample and beat people.
Egypt ordered a crackdown against anti-government demonstrators, but not with troops, tanks, or uniformed police. Instead, it sent in goon squads disguised as supporters of President Mubarak. It was immediately clear these were not demonstrators. Thousands of Mubarak supporters charged into Cairo's Tahrir Square. The protesters, unarmed, were caught off guard by the surprise attack. The pro-Mubarak demonstrators rushed the protesters on horseback and with camels.
As in Iran 2 years before Tahrir Square, these militias were an important part of the way that the government was using force against its own people. They try to use the military in these cases. They definitely use police and other uniformed forces. But to be able to use out-of-uniform forces is a way to employ violence against your own people in ways that you do not want to have to defend or explain. As a despot fighting your own citizens, you can direct these militias to do anything you want, and you can deny responsibility for everything they do. That is what the U.S. government says is happening now in yet another country, in Syria, where a 15-month uprising against the Assad regime is blamed for between 9,000 and 12,000 deaths already. More than 100 of those deaths occurred all at once on Friday in a town called Hula. 108 people killed. 83 of them women and children. A UN investigation of the massacre says many of the deaths appear to have just been summary executions, whole families shot inside their houses, just wiped out. The UN report does not say who committed the killings, but witnesses to the massacre, including at least one survivor who was wounded and only survived thanks to being left for dead, said that most of the killings were committed by militias, by pro-government militiamen acting for the government, but while not wearing uniforms. True to type, the Syrian government says it is not responsible for what happened in Hula this weekend. They are blaming the massacre there on terrorists. The U.S. government says it was the Syrian militia, and that the Syrian militia is being aided and abetted by, frankly, Syria's last stone ally in the world, the Iranians. Russia had been something close to an ally for Syria for all of this time, but the Hula massacre appears to be maybe even too much for Russia. Russia joined the rest of the UN Security Council this weekend in condemning the massacre. And then today, a dramatic coordinated action. France, Britain, Canada, Germany, Italy, Spain, Australia, Bulgaria, and us, the government of the United States, all announcing simultaneously that they are kicking out Syria's top diplomats as a protest.
This morning, we called in Syrian Chargé d'Affaires Zahir Jabbour and informed him that he is no longer welcome in the United States and gave him 72 hours to depart. We took this action in response to the massacre in the village of Hula. Absolutely indefensible, vile, despicable massacre against innocent children, women, shot at point-blank range by regime thugs, the Shabiha, aided and abetted by the Iranians who were actually bragging about it over the weekend. And again, the fact that Assad has to call in these Shabiha thugs, has to hire thugs off the street to go do his dirty bidding, and has to get outside aid from his only friend left, the Iranians, speaks to his desperation.